Professor Listing,
Hi.
what a surprise to see you here.
Yeah, it's delightful to see you as well.
Can I inquire what you're reading?
Yeah, I'm currently revisiting one of my favorite short stories, The Test If They're Drawn by Kate Grenville.
Kate Grenville? Fascinating. She's such an intriguing author. How old is she now? And I believe she written quite about books and all.
Indeed, she was born in 1950, which makes her in her 70s now. She has enjoyed an illustrious career, having authored 15 books across a diverse range of genres: fiction, non-fiction, biographies, and even works on the craft of writing itself. Not to mention, she has gendered numerous accolades. For instance, in 2001, she was awarded the Orange Grand Prize for the idea of perfection, and in 2006, she wrote the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for The Secret River.
Remarkable, and I feel like what makes her stories particularly compelling is how they are often infused with her personal experiences. Her time living in London, Paris, and the United States, as well as her varied professional roles, such as film editing and teaching creative writing. These experiences profoundly shape the narrative she creates.
Yes, precisely. Especially what captives me most about this short story collection, Bearded Ladies, is her ability to confront complex, often uncomfortable themes with both wit and insight. This collection consists of 12 stories, each delving into distinct phases of life, particularly through a female lens.
One of Grenville's greatest strengths are her ability to confront complex, often comfortable themes with both wit and insight.
Precisely, every story feels like a journey. Grenville deftly blends humor with sharp social critique, particularly around issues of gender and societal expectations.
And which of her short stories are you reading now, Professor Pravita?
I completed the entire collection once more, but I find myself frequently returning to particular stories. Most recently, I revisited The Test Is If They Drown. Each time I reread it, new layers of meaning emerge, revealing depths I hadn't appreciated before. Well, next me, what a delightful coincidence. It seems we both found ourselves drawn to this calm scene.
Just don't look at me.
Great minds, as they say, do think alike.
Pravita, I didn't expect to see you here. What brings you to this show?
I was having a discussion with my very educated student from Kate Grenville's short story, The Test Is If They Drown. I see you're at it too. Is this your first or second reading?
Second? Pravita, I have read it 7 times now. It's one of those stories that I never stops rereading in layers.
Is that so? I'm on my 9th read and still discovering nuances I hadn't noticed before.
Well, if you have read so much before, why don't we have a discussion about this in some place night?
Why not?
They're really going at it. Should we say something?
I think it's best if you just watch. It's like witnessing a masterclass in literary analysis.
The central theme of the test is if they drown revolves around the pervasive societal expectations imposed upon women and how these expectations suffocate their individuality, reducing them to mere reflection of societal demands.
True. Grenville masterfully depicts the theme in her title as well. The title alludes to a historical practice during mistrials. The accused, often women, were subjected to an ordeal of water, tied up and cast into a river or lake. If they sang, it was deemed as a sign of their innocence, and they would be pulled from the water, provided they survived. However, if they floated, it was taken as a proof of their guilt. Water being perceived as pure was believed to reject evil, thus branding these who floated.
So in sense, it was a no-win situation. Regardless to the outcome, they were condemned.
That story elevates the meaning of the story. The story vividly illustrates how societal expectations confine women to restrict roles, portraying their struggle to assert their individuality and resist these limitations. Grenville critiques these stereotypes by showcasing women who defy traditional norms, thereby advocating for a more nuanced and equitable understanding of female identity. Through this narrative, Grenville emphasizes the importance of breaking free from oppressive societal expectations and embracing a more complex view of women's role and potential.
Yes, Miss Pierre, the central character is emblematic of the spinster stereotype. A woman who is both feared and pitied simply because she doesn't fit into the mold of wife or mother. Grenville uses Miss Pierre as a powerful symbol that happens when a woman deviates from societal norms. Miss Pierre is described as an old maid, someone who didn't marry and lives alone with her cat. The narrator Sandy sees Miss Pierre through the eyes of the community, which has labeled her with all kinds of negative stereotypes.
Precisely, for instance, consider this exploit. Of course, Miss Pierre isn't really just an old maid whose dad left her house when he died. They say she can't really just be an old stick whose cat gets fish every day, while she makes do with eggs, except for a threat once a month. An old lady wearing funny clothes living in a big house with a cat must be a witch. No way, she can be anything else. A witch, a murderer, a gobbler of children, a creature from another planet, an alien. Sandy's internal conflict reveals an insidious power of societal influence. She understands the truth, but in unwilling or unable to reject the prevailing stereotypes, these comparisons highlight the pervasive nature of prejudice, how it can distort reality and shape perceptions even when the truth is apparent. The narrative underscores how societal manipulation can be purposeful marginalization, with Sandy embodying the struggle to reconcile personal understanding with collective prejudice. Her struggles illuminates the broader theme of how societal expectation can wrap perception, reinforcing the marginalization of those who deviate from the accepted norms.
This also vividly contrasts Sandy's awareness of Miss Pierre's true nature with her adherence to the community's exaggerated and irrational beliefs. Sandy recognizes that Miss Pierre is not the villainous figure described by the gossip. She is simply a middle-aged woman with peculiar habits. Yet, despite this knowledge, Sandy still subscribes to the absurd theories, reflecting how deeply societal conditioning can influence individual perceptions.
Another revealing quotation is, "I watch Miss Pierre until she turns the corner and wonder what she is. Women don't wear hats like that you can see her through. Women don't wear sand shoes and no socks so their ankles show red and sneak. And women don't chop the heads off dandelions with a stick as she's doing now. If Mrs. Longburn at school with a smooth chignon and her dainty handkerchiefs is a woman wear that made sphere. This aspect emphasizes the stark contrast between the sphere and the conventional image of womanhood embodied by Mrs. Longman. Miss Spear's divergence from these norms renders her an object of curiosity or alienation. This contrast underscores how rigid societal expectations force women into narrowly defined roles, rendering those who relate as outsiders or anomalies.
More consider the quote, Mum calls her poor Miss Spear and says there's a sad story there somewhere. This reflects how societal expectations shape perceptions of those who are different. Miss Spear is viewed with pity through a sympathetic lens rather than being genuinely understood or accepted. Such pity, rather than fostering true inclusion, serves as a form of societal control, reinforcing her status as an outsider rather than acknowledging her true individuality.
This phenomenon can be identified as a passive enabling. Passive-aggressive enablers like Sandy's mother contribute to the perpetuation of marginalization. While they are not actively engaging in discrimination, their pity and condescension uphold societal boundaries that exclude those who deviate from conventional norms. In Miss Pierce's cause, this pity is not authentic compassion but a superficial gesture that maintains her status as an outsider rather than facilitating genuine inclusion.
Another example for passive enabling in this statement, my dad says what she needs is a good fuck. This example embodies a harmful and disrespectful attitude that not only dismisses Miss Spears individually but objectifies her in a manner that reinforces her marginalization. This aggressive enabling is particularly detrimental as it does not merely marginalize but actively underestimates her dignity and humanity.
Distinction between passive-aggressive enablers and aggressive enablers lies in their methods of perpetuating marginalization. Passive enablers contribute through silence or indirect actions, often manifesting through subtle forms of acceptance. In indifferent, conversely, aggressive enablers actively engage in and promote harmful behaviors or attitudes, making the impact of their actions more direct and apparent.
Yes, an excellent example for aggressive enablers in the children in this story. In the test is, if they did drown, the children act as aggressively enablers by chanting insults at Miss Pierce. With each child's participation, encouraging the others. The quote, silly old witch, I yell. Behind me, the others are chanting. Ugly old witch, silly old witch, illustrates this group behavior. By joining in, they dehumanize her and create a toxic dynamic where cruelty is normalized. This aggressive enabling amplifies the harm, showing how group actions can escalate bullying and cause lasting damage to the victim's dignity.
Miss Spear's marginalization is further emphasized by the stereotypes associated with her being a spinster. The quote, "The Miss Spear is what happens to you if the orange peel doesn't make a ladder when you drop it on the ground. Miss Spear is what happens to you if you don't step on all the cracks in the footpath between the school gate and Spencer's shop. Miss Spear is what happens when you lose a game of Old Maid," illustrates the superstitions and whimsical beliefs of children used to explain her status. In the past, spinsters like Miss Spear were often viewed through the lens of superstition and societal scorn. They were seen as failures or anomalies, punished by a fate of loneliness due to their nonconformity for societal expectations of marriage and traditional roles. This reflects a deep-seated discomfort with women who do not adhere to these norms.
The stereotype has evolved but persists in different forms today. Modern day equivalents often involve judgments about women who remain single or who choose unconventional paths. Such judgments continue to perpetuate the marginalization of those who deviate from traditional expectations, reinforcing the theme of social pressure stiffing individually.
Grenville critiques these stereotypes by presenting Miss Peer as a figure who is misunderstood and vilified simply for not fitting into a traditional role. Today, we still see how women who deviate from societal expectations, whether they choose or not to marry, to pursue careers, or to live independently, often face similar stigmatizations. The stereotype of the crazy cat lady or spinster persists, show how slow progress can be. But Grenville also hints at the strength and resilience of women like Miss Peer who survive and even thrive despite these labels. Spinster stereotype is deeply ingrained in the culture, often associated with loneliness, eccentricity, and even stereotype is deeply ingrained in the culture.
Yes, misfear is essentially what happens when you don't follow the expected life script. The quote, misfear is what happens to you if the orange peel doesn't make a letter when you drop it on the ground. Misfear is what happens to you if you don't step on all the cracks in the footpath between the school gate and Spencer's shop. Speak to these superstitions and irrational fear that surrounds women who don't conform. It's all as if society needs to find a reason, a flaw in Miss Fears to explain why she is different. This is why she is seen as a warning or bad woman. It's easier to label her as a witch or an alien than to accept that she simply chose a different path. And it's a powerful reminder that we need to question the narratives we have been handed down about women and their roles in society. Only then we can move towards a more inclusive and understanding world.
Notice how nicely the flow of the story goes. The plot is like this.
This plot can actually be explained through the free text pyramid, a tool often used to map out the structure of a story. The exposition sets a rather intriguing tone. The narrative opens by presenting this fear as perceived through the eyes of the local children. They view her as an embodiment of local folk and superstition, which establishes the foundational conflict and introduces Miss Fears as a figure shrouded in mystery and appreciation. This focuses on how the protagonist Sandy is conditioned by society to internalize and believe the superstitions and narratives about Miss Fear, who is marginalized as a result.
Precisely. Moving to the rising action, the story intensifies as Mick recounts increasingly extravagant and fantastical tales about Miss Peer. In an attempt to surpass Mick, Sandy fabricates a macabre narrative about Miss Peer allegedly murdering and stuffing her father. This escalation of fear and suspicion among the children propels Sandy to undertake a daring investigation into Miss Peer's residence.
Falling action is marked by Sandy's internal conflict. Despite her revelation of Miss Peer's true nature, Sandy faces peer pressure to continue the harassment. Her moral struggle is evident as she grapples with her own understanding versus the collective expectation of her peers. revealing the complexities of her internal conflict and the social pressure that influence her actions.
In the resolution, Sandy's internal disillusionment becomes apparent. Despite her knowledge of Miss Pierce's true character, she acquiesces to the group's antagonism. The conclusion of the story underscores Sandy's sense of guilt and the inherent challenges of resisting social pressures, ultimately reflecting on the loss of innocence and the harsh realities of conforming the societal expectations. The group
One thing I realized when reading this story was how she masterfully uses multiple literary devices to portray the theme. Grenville employs a wide range of literary devices such as symbolism, imagery, first person narrative, dialogues, simile, irony, and juxtaposition.
Absolutely, Dinan. The text, if they're drawn, is rich with vivid imaginary that immerse the reader in the world of Miss Fear and the children who observe her. For example, the imaginary damp hydrangea bushes, as tall as I am, crowd over the path, holding out clammy flowers like brains. The leaves are as smooth as skin as I push through, and some are heavy with the weight of snails glued to them. Depicts Miss Fear's garden. This vivid description mirrors the oppressive and suffocating atmosphere that surrounds her, reinforcing the theme of societal expectation, stifling individuality. And the image, the house tosses smoothly behind him like a water, symbolizes how society, through its rigid norms and expectations, engulfs and isolates individuals who do not conform. This image conveys a sense of suffocation and exclusion, just as water engulfs and drowns. The societal forces represented here as the house closing marginalized Miss Fear by rejecting her nonconformity. It's a metaphor for how those who deviate from societal norms are often submerged and rendered invisible, forced to become the other and face isolation. This image powerfully reflects the story's theme of how societal expectations can drown out individual uniqueness and reinforce conformity.
Just like how society expects women to conform to traditional roles and tries to attack marginalized women who do not conform to those rules. Take Kamala Harris for an example. Harris, despite her career, accomplishment, and political influence, has faced criticism not for her policies or leadership, but for her deeply personal choice that challenges the traditional notion of femininity. The fact that her childness became a topic of public scrutiny illustrates how societal views still impose rigid gender roles on women, expecting them to fulfill predefined roles. Even if even if they are already excelling in other areas. The critique of Kamala Harris for not having children reflects a broader societal expectation that women must conform to traditional roles, such as becoming a mother, in order to be seen as a complete or acceptable.
The Test is If They Drown is a story that explores themes of isolation, societal expectations, and the consequences of misunderstanding. Symbolism plays a crucial role in conveying these ideas. For instance, we watch her cat stalking a butterfly through the long grass, sliding on its belly, ears flattened to its skull. The cat in Miss Pierce's garden is a powerful symbolism. It represents Miss Pierce herself, solitary, independent, and misunderstood. Just as the children view the cat with fiction, they also project their fears and misconceptions onto Miss Peer. The way the cat is portrayed stalking the butterfly mirrors how Miss Pierce navigates her life, watched and judged by those around her. In a broader sense, the cat symbolizes how society often misunderstands and isolates those who don't fit in the mold.
That's a great point. Another symbol, the creepers.
Yes, sometimes Miss Priya herself comes out and drags ineffectually at the consuming creepers. They symbolize the societal expectation and rumors that have entangled Miss Priya's life. Her futile efforts to control them represents her struggles against these external forces. It's as if no matter how much she tries to push back, the creepers of societal judgment continues to grow.
That makes me think of how today's societal pressure leads to women being consistently overlooked in professions and bearing leadership positions. Women are often overlooked for leadership positions due to persistent gender biases, stereotypes, and structural barriers that favor men. Despite significant progress, the representation of women in top executive roles remain disproportionately low. Traditionally, views often associate leadership with masculine traits, leading to biases in hiring and promotions. As of 2023, women hold only about 10.4% of CEO positions, Fortune 500 companies. The tech industry is particularly gender biased, with women holding only 5% of leadership positions in tech companies. In Silicon Valley, the disparity is stark, with men numbering women in executive roles by a wide margin. These statistics highlight the significant gender gap in leadership, particularly in the IT industry, where cultural and structural biases continue to hinder women progress.
The use of dialogue in Miss Field's character is particularly inclusive in conveying the theme of societal misunderstanding and the marginalization of those deviate from norms. For instance, the dialogue, "She's not normal, my mom says," ought to be looked up in the loony bin. Mick says loudly, "My dad says what she needs is a good farm," highlights the pervasive and damaging stereotypes held by the community. This dialogue reveals how children are indoctrinated with prejudiced views by their parents, reflecting the enriched biases that reinforce societal norms and perpetuate marginalization. Through these dialogues, Grenville effectively illustrates the ways in which social attitudes shapes and often distorted perceptions of individuals.
Kate Grenville masterfully illustrates Sandy's character evolution throughout the story, particularly through her use of dialogue. Initially, Sandy displays strong leadership skills, manipulating her peers by fabricating stories about Miss Pierce to assert dominance. This is evident in the line, "Leadership means having no fear of the next life, I say immediately," which highlights her confidence and control. However, after encountering Miss Pierce's unexpected kindness, Sandy experiences an internal conflict, something she had never faced before. The kindness challenges her previous notions, leading to a significant shift in her character.
By the story's conclusion, as her friends continue to taunt Miss Fierce, Sandy finds herself torn between loyalty to her peers and the truth she has come to realize. Her internal struggle is vividly captured through the dialogue. The story's conclusion, as her friends continue to taunt Miss Fierce, Sandy finds herself torn between loyalty to her peers and the truth she has to come to realize. Her internal struggle is vividly captured through the dialogue. such as, "What's up, Sandy? You scared or something?" And her response, "She's just an old bird. Leave her alone." This moment shows the immense pressure she feels from her peers, highlighting how she is struggling to reconcile her newfound understanding of these fears with the group's expectations. Sandy's uncertainty is further emphasized when she refines leadership during this moment of doubt. Thinking. Leadership means falling into line. This stark contrast from her earlier belief reveals how the encounter with Miss Fierce has reshaped her understanding of leadership, from one of the dominance and lies to one burdened by conforming and the pressure to maintain group loyalty. Her shifting attitude reflects her internal turmoil, as she now questions the value of leading through her fear and realizes the complexity of standing apart from the group. Dialogues are also skillfully used by the author to show how the children have been conditioned by society. Check this for instance. "She's not normal. My mom says ought to be looked up in the lonely me." Mixed remark. "My dad says what she needs is a good farm." Reflects how their behavior is a direct result of societal conditioning. Instead of forming their own opinions, they mimic the discriminatory and crude judgments of their parents, perpetuating these toxic attitudes. The children's aggression and lack of empathy stem from being taught to view those who don't conform as outcasts, leaning intolerance from the adults around them. This reflects how society and parental influence shape children's perspectives, them to adapt biases and cruel behaviors at an early age. Hateful, but have been conditioned to ridicule those who don't fit societal norms, reinforcing the cycle of marginalization.
This reflects the struggles women face globally when they defy traditional roles. In Afghanistan, since the Taliban's return, girls and women have been banned from higher education to reinforce rigid gender norms. Similarly, in 2012, Malala Yousafzai was shot by the Taliban for advocating girls' education, leading to global protests and the creation of the Malala Fund. Women challenging societal norms are often labeled as abnormal or oppressed, and 2022 UN Women Study shows that 90% of people hold bias against women, perpetuating their marginalization when they deviate from the expectations.
And hyperbole plays its part too. The use of hyperbole in Grenville's narrative is the potent literary technique and amplifies the theme of misunderstanding and exaggeration. For instance, the phrase "more eggs than you believe" serves as a hyperbolic establishment underscoring the children's tendency to perceive Miss Pierce's ordinary shopping habits as mysteries and sinister. A reflection of how rumors can escalate and distort reality, something we see in modern life with the spread of misformation. Similarly, the assertion that an old lady wearing funny clothes living in a big house with a cat must be a witch exemplifies an extreme exaggeration reflecting the children's inclination to draw a far-fetched conclusion based on superficial observation. This is a classic hyperbole statement reflecting their time, understanding, and tendency to jump to extreme conclusion based on superficial details.
That reminds me of how people today might make exaggerated assumptions based on normal things. In the workplace, natural aspects of women's lives, such as pregnancy, are often exaggerated to the point where they become a bias for discrimination and unfair treatment. Despite legal protections in many countries, women still face significant challenges related to maternity and other natural bodily processes. which are often viewed as burdensome by employers. One of the issues is the loss of jobs during or after maternity leave. For instance, in the United States, despite Family and Medical Leave Act providing up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for eligible employees, for many women return to find that their positions have been eliminated or that they have been replaced. A notable case is that the Stephanie Hicks, a police officer in Alabama who was demoted and eventually resigned after returning to maternity leave. She sued her employer and won with the court ruling that her demotion was due to her pregnancy and her need to pump breast milk at work.
Another issue is the bias against hiring women due to the concerns about pregnancy or other natural processes. Some employers perceive women as potential liabilities because they may need maternity leave, take time off to care for children, or require accommodations for other health related issues. This bias was evident in the case of the Australian woman, Annalise Cooper, who was asked during a job interview about her plans for having children. Although illegal, such questions reveal a discriminatory mindset where women are seen as fewer desirable candidates simply because of their potential to become pregnant. In the United Kingdom, the case of Nadine Lee highlights this issue further. Lee, who worked as a senior banker, was dismissed from her job shortly after informing her employer of her pregnancy. She took her case to an employment tribunal, which found that her dismissal was directly linked to her pregnancy.
This example reflects a broader social problem where natural aspects of women's lives are not just exaggerated but weaponized against them in professional settings. Instead of supporting women through these life changes, some employees choose to penalize them, reinforcing gender inequality in the workplace. This contradiction between society claim of supporting women and the reality of workplace discrimination highlights the persistent challenges women face simply for being women.
Another key literary device Kate Grenville employs to explore the central theme of dehumanization is narrative perspective. This narrative language illustrates how Sandy thoughts and perceptions of Miss Peer have been influenced by society. For instance, Sandy initially thinks of course, Miss Peer isn't really just an old maid whose dad left her the house when he died, like they said. An old lady wearing funny clothes, living in a big house with a cat must be a witch, an alien. Even though it seems ridiculous, Sandy thoughts have been shaped by society to accept this belief.
The most beautiful aspect of using this narrative language is that it clearly demonstrates how, even when Sandy has the slightest doubt, she quickly dismisses it because society asserts otherwise. Grenville masterfully captures this dynamic through first person narration, which is the most effective way to convey this experience. Also, here, when she says, the tears rise in my throat and run down my cheeks, I hear myself yell and see her face change until my voice cracks. The first person narrative captures Sandy's internal conflict and discomfort, highlighting how she is pressured by her peers and fears being the only one with a different perspective. This personal view helps illustrate the theme of dehumanization by showing how Sandy perceptions and feelings are influenced by her peers and social norms.
It's sad how society expects women to conform to its expectations. This actually highlights how relatable Grenville's theme in the test if they drawn is, even to contemporary readers. It brings awareness to how common this issue is in real life and how deeply it affects women who are marginalized when they do not conform. However, I am happy to say that there are successful women who have rejected these social norms, achieved success, and are living fulfilling lives.
Yes, for an example, the Sri Lankan women's cricket team has made significant strides in a field historically dominated by men. The team's captain Chamari Athapathu's knock-off 178 against Australia in the 2017 ICC Women's World Cup made her an international star and set a new benchmark for excellence in women's cricket globally. Her achievement not only brought recognition to the team but also highlighted the potential of female athletes in Sri Lanka.
Yes, that's remarkable considering the barriers she faced as a woman. Women's cricket often receives less funding, fewer training facilities, and limited media coverage compared to the men's cricket. This lack of resources has historically held back to the development of women's teams and limited their ability to compete at the highest levels.
The team's success has inspired a new generation of girls to take up cricket, showing them that there is a place for women in sports at the highest levels. The rise of women cricketers has created more visibility and sparked interest in sports for girls in schools and communities. Sri Lanka's women's cricket team has become a symbol of resilience and defiance against restrictive gender norms, setting a precedent for the future generations of women in sports.
This has been an eye-opening journey through Grenville's world. The layers of meaning we've uncovered are truly remarkable.
Absolutely. Each layer reflects not only the narrative but also mirrors aspects of our own lives. It's fascinating how these themes resonate with modern society's fears and prejudices.
I'm glad we had this conversation. It shows just how powerful stories can be.
How talking them through with friends bring us out inside we might be miss alone.
Here's to more stories and more of these conversations.
And to never lose our curiosity, always pushing deeper.